Here I am, Greg Misfit Manley with Spider One from Powerman 5000.
Yes. Hello. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Great. Fantastic.
Alright. Growing up in Massachusetts, what influenced you to become a musician?
What influenced me? Well, I think it was a combination of growing up in a small town and being bored out of my mind and not knowing what else to do. But at a young age, like early in high school, I discovered punk rock, and that was sort of the thing that made me see music in a whole different way. In a way that I thought, well, I could do that. Before I found bands like the Ramones and the Clash, and music was this weird magical thing that I never thought I could be a part of. But then when I saw these bands, I was like, well, I could do that. You don't have to be the best singer in the world. You don't have to. It's more about attitude. And not that Powerman is a punk rock band at all, but it really was the thing that influenced me to start, thinking about the idea of starting a band. And then I would jump on the train on the weekends and come into Boston and see all the all ages hardcore shows, and so I discovered that there was a local scene, and from then on I just started, on a journey to try to make music.
Dropping out of art school, what made you final straw that and go straight into music?
Well, I think it was because I just figured if I was going to do music, I better do it when I was young, and I figured I could always paint when I was 80, and so in art school it was cool in art school, but I just didn't really feel like I fit in there, I was like, I don't know, I had a certain idea of what it was going to be, and it just wasn't that, and so it just, I don't know, it just didn't stick for me. I guess college was never my thing, so yeah, after that I just, kind of floundered around for a while in Boston until I met, like-minded people and started to jam and try to write some songs.
Awesome. In your music, you have a lot of science fiction style lyrics, sound bites. What exactly brought you into coming with a science fiction theme towards your music?
Well, it just was, similar thing. Growing up, there wasn't a lot to do where I grew up, so I just became obsessed with TV and movies and watched, way too much, ridiculous, inappropriate movies that I probably was too young to watch. And then I collected comic books, and I was just sort of like a nerd, that this weird mix of science fiction comic book nerd mixed with punk rock kid, and it just sort of all came together. And I just thought it would be cool to, to me, there are certain bands that, because of the things that they sing about or talk about or the way they represent themselves, you feel like you know them a little bit better, and I always liked that when there were bands that, you sort of figured like, well, I bet they like the same movies I like, and I bet they, and a lot of bands don't do that. They just sort of play their music or sing about sort of generic, heartbreak or being misunderstood or whatever the hell people sing about. And I just thought it'd be fun to make a band that not only played, cool music, but was sort of a lifestyle thing where people understood like where my head was at. So it was just always interesting to bring in that sort of pop culture point of view into the music.
Awesome. In the end of the 90s, you came out with Tonight the Stars Revolt.
Right.
What exactly, the overall, after all the work was said and done, how did you feel knowing that your album was out there and after all your hard work, you were out in the music world?
It actually, someone paid attention. Yeah, it was weird. It was a very strange thing because we were always this kind of weird underground band, and we started out in Boston, obviously, and it became sort of like a local favorite, but we weren't a big band by any means. And I always just thought this was, Powerman was just, this quirky band for a few different people to understand. And then all of a sudden we had this hit song, and it was on MTV, and it was on the radio constantly, and it just became popular, which was just kind of blew my mind because I never thought that it would be. I never thought it would make sense to that many people. But it was also a sign of the times. The late 90s was a time where a lot of bands, the music industry was really, it was different. It was very healthy, and everyone bought records and went to see concerts, and sort of pre-internet, not pre-internet, but pre-sort of online, online culture. So I feel fortunate to have benefited from that time,
Yeah, and the main song that off that album, When Worlds Collide,
right.
when you were writing that song, did you expect it to actually be the jump towards that album and what got it out there?
I mean, I always thought it was a good song. The record label didn't, that's for sure. This funny story about that album is that when we were making Tonight the Stars Are Born, that was when I sort of decided I wanted to do this sci-fi influence thing. And everyone at DreamWorks thought I was insane. They literally, I remember one day my A&R guy sat me down in his office, and he's like, watch this. He puts on a Deftones video, and it was like, the Deftones and kids skateboarding and baggy pants and baseball hats back. He's like, this is what you should be doing, man. Like, this is what the kids are into. And I was like, well, yeah, but like they're doing it. Like they do it pretty good. Like I don't need to do that. I want to do this, and they just thought I was insane. And I remember we would do photo shoots, and we'd have our weird like spacesuit outfits, and everyone just shaking their head in disapproval. And they didn't know what to make of it. And at the time there was, I don't know if they still do it, but there's a radio convention called R&R. I don't know if they still do it anymore, but it was in LA. And there was part of the convention where all the labels submitted their new artists and new songs for sort of like all the radio programmers to pick their favorite song at the convention. And Worlds Collide won. So all the program, they became unanimous, like this was the best song of the convention. Then suddenly, we were geniuses, and then all of a sudden it was like we had a hit and everybody, believed in us. But until that moment, I don't think they had a clue as to, whether we had a hit song or I think they thought we were out of our minds. But luckily, it worked out.
Transform, the album cover of Transform is something that totally just changed the look of everything.
Right.
And actually it's one of the greatest album artworks of all time.
Thanks, man.
How do you feel the album artwork explained the music that was on the album?
Well, I mean, I think the idea behind Transform was that, it was sort of I guess my way of stepping aside from, I just want to be careful not to get too locked into one thing. So we sort of did this, this sidestep to a little more stripped down, a little more, let my punk rock influences come through a little bit more. The artwork was, I guess an influence from back in my art school days and sort of this Basquiat sort of weird, social commentary mess of a cover. And, I think it confused a lot of the fans. I mean, quite honestly, the music to me doesn't really sound that much different than what we had been doing, but the visual was so different that a lot of people were, sort of turned their heads and didn't quite understand, like, well, where are the spaceships, But I always felt it wasn't that far off, from what we had been doing. But so that was sort of the idea behind that.
All right. The singles like Supervillain, V is for Vampire, and Horror Show were what you used to promote Somewhere on the Other Side of Nowhere.
Right.
What made you decide these are the songs that we decide to bring out before even the album comes out?
Well, I mean, sometimes you just only have certain songs written. Now, those are some of the first songs we wrote for the album. And generally, I always feel like the best songs we ever write on an album are usually the first few. And then you spend the rest of the time just trying to make, ones that are as good as those ones. But, I mean, I always felt that those really represented the album well. And Supervillain, certainly to me, it sort of found its own way. It was just a demo, and we hadn't put out any music in a long time. We put it out on the internet just to sort of test the waters, and all of a sudden it became really like a fan favorite and really popular, and we were like, we better make an album now. So we started writing, and to me that album is a real success because it kind of brings all the things that I love together. I feel like we've kind of gone back to that Tonight the Stars Revolt sound, a little more electronic-y, a little more metal, a little more sci-fi, but having learned, I guess, how to write better songs over the years, I feel like it's certainly my favorite record we've ever made. And it kind of put us back in good graces with the fan base. They're like, okay, cool, now you're back doing what you're supposed to be doing,
With that album, you guys came out with the mask that is on the cover of the album and is used during your live show. That just sends chills down everybody's watching this back. What made you come up with maybe we should do this idea of putting these masks on, coming out and rocking it?
You know, it's funny. I don't remember exactly how. I think we were just sitting around one day, and it was one of those things. Wouldn't it be funny if we dressed up as robots, and then, you know, you laugh it off, like, yeah, that'd be really stupid, and then you think about it again. Well, maybe that would be cool, and then we just started designing these helmets, and you know, before we knew it, we had them in our hands, and it's pretty badass, you know. I mean, look, it's, you know, there's a lot, you know, it's a great mix of, I mean, to me, what Powerman was done well is it's like a great science fiction movie. It's just fun and goofy and stupid, but it's also used as it's a great, like, metaphor for society, and you can talk about things that, you know, without being so heavy-handed. And so this idea of the band transforming into robots, and, you know, it could be either viewed as just really just fun, or there's like there's something happening there. You know, it's you know, it could be a little bit of a commentary on our own world we live in.
Copies, Clones, and Replicants. You came out with an album just full of cover songs.
Right.
What was it like? Well, first of all, what did you feel? Why would you come out with an album full of cover songs? And then what was it like?
That's a good question.
Taking all the songs that you had, and how did it feel actually performing it to your sound?
Well, it was, you know, the interesting about that album is it was never, in my mind, ever supposed to be an album. And we got approached by this label to do 11 or 12 cover tunes. And it was my understanding that it was going to be for, you know, maybe licensing to movies or television. And, you know, there was always a stipulation in the contract that they could release it as an album if they wanted to, but we figured it'd never be released as an album, and we're like, we'll just do this and no one will ever know about it. And next thing I know, they're like, yeah, they're putting it out as an album. I was like, I didn't really want to make a cover tune album. It was never, you know, I would have never chose to put it out as an album. Although I do think there are some good moments on it, you know. But it was, to be honest with you, making that thing was so difficult, you know, because it's just as much work as making a regular record, making original songs. I mean, even though you're not writing the songs, we essentially rewrote all the songs, and we didn't really stick to the original very closely on many of them. So, and then you're just singing other people's lyrics, and, you know, and a lot of them are just ridiculous and awful, and so it was definitely it was a tough one to make, and but you know, a couple of them turned out pretty cool. You know, some of them I, you know, wouldn't mind just seeing disappear forever, but yeah, cover tunes.
On your set list now, there's a song that most people aren't familiar with, "How to Be a Human."
How do you know that?
I saw your show on this past Saturday. I saw that, so I could.
Oh, where were we?
The Tammany Hall in Worcester.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. All right.
So, with this new song, is there anything new coming out with the song?
I mean, I hope so. When we get off the road, we're going to go back and just keep writing. And we've got a handful of songs written, and that, you know, we knew we wanted to try to play something new. I mean, this is the first time, I think, in a very long time that we've played a song that hasn't already been released. So it's the response has been pretty remarkable. You know, usually you play a new song that nobody's heard, they go get a beer, you know. And this time, like, people are digging it, you know. I mean, it's pretty infectious song in that Powerman style, that 4 on the floor and just big chorus, and yeah, I'm excited about it. I like it a lot, and it's really fun to play. And but yeah, that's hopefully the beginning of the new album when we get back home in about 10 days and start working on it.
Awesome. What else should the fans expect from Powerman 5000 in the future?
Well, I mean, you know, I think the first priority is to write a new record and put out some new music, and then I'm sure after there we'll have some more touring plans. We're going to try and do a lot more overseas stuff. We've generally avoided leaving the States, you know, but there's talk of going over to Europe soon and doing that, and maybe doing some festivals over there in the summertime. We just got back from China, which was pretty awesome. So yeah, I think, you know, the strategy remains the same. Just try to write some good songs and go out and play them as loud as you can.
How's the international response?
Well, I'll tell you what, China was pretty awesome. We didn't know what to expect, because it's all very new, you know, over there. Not a lot of bands have played over there, and we were actually the first American band to play this particular festival. and they went nuts, man. Like, I didn't know what if it was going to be reserved or what the vibe was going to be over there, but it's kids are the same everywhere. They just want to tear it up and have fun, and we had a blast over there, and so hopefully we'll go back soon. And internationally, we haven't done a ton of it, so it'll be interesting to see how Europe goes. I mean, I haven't been to Europe in 10 years, so but I think they still have some fans over there.
Is there any bands that you are seeing and you are looking forward to hearing more of, or
new bands?
Yep.
That's good. I hate to say it, but I'm not really even sure what's going on out there in the music world. You guys would know better than me. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how you find out about bands anymore. We live in a weird time where there are bands out there that are like huge and doing, and I just don't ever hear of them because it's just such a weird. It used to be such a simple way to find out about bands. You listen to the radio, or you saw them on MTV, or and there's always been underground scenes, and local scenes, but I don't know, man.
Is there anybody you would love to play with in the future?
Other bands? I mean, I would love to play with anybody, man. I mean, we've played with so many bands over the years, and I feel really fortunate that, I used to work at, when there were record stores, I used to work at Tower Records in Boston, and it's pretty crazy that I pretty much played with all the bands. I used to stock their CDs on the shelves and put price tags on, so I feel really, really happy to have shared the stage with so many great bands. And but I'd love to mix it up a little bit more, try and play shows with bands outside of our genre, and just sort of see the live experience being a little more varied, and play with electronic artists and play with heavy bands and play with pop bands, and that's what it was like in China. When we did the festival, we were the only real aggressive band. Everything else was all over the map. And it's kind of cool that way, instead of the same thing over and over. Like a lot of American festivals, just the same, sort of, whatever, sort of modern heavy band. Some version of Nickelback, that everyone seems to be doing these days.
Yeah, well, that's actually all the questions I do.
All right, so we got through them all.
I thank you so much.
No
You've
problem.
brought the music world, and I appreciate everything that you've done.
Thank you, man.